All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming down to the Basque Museum for this presentation. It is a great pleasure to introduce Eukene Franco-Landa. She got her BA in Basque Studies from the University of the Basque Country, and then her MA in Basque Linguistics and Philology from that same university. She is a PhD candidate. That means that she completed her comprehensive exams, which, believe me, are quite the feat. So congratulations. She completed her comprehensive exams this year, so that makes her a PhD candidate in Literary, Cultural, and Linguistic Studies at the University of Miami. Her dissertation is a comparative study of the morphosyntactic variation between Basque and Spanish speakers in the Basque Country and Basque and English speakers here in the United States, focusing on speakers' attitudes towards the language. She's currently conducting interviews for her fieldwork. So if anybody is interested, be sure to talk to Eukene at the end of this presentation, because I'm sure she would love to interview you. So without further ado, Eukene Franco-Landa.
Okay, so today's talk is Irulegiko Eskua, how a treasure from the Basque can help us understand Basque New-Speakerism in contemporary Nafarroa. So for you, maybe didn't know, or in November was presented in the public this hand, which is a really ancient artifact that it's thought that maybe it helps us discover a little bit more of the mystery of Basque language. So what is Irulegiko Eskua? We'll start with some basic Basque here. So here we have Irulegi, the name of the place, then we have Ko, which is from, and then Eskua hand. So it's the hand from Irulegi or Irulegi's hand. So it's an archaeological find that's estimated to be from the 1st century before Christ. It's a bronze plaque with an inscription that may be Basque. So where was it? Let's start with very basic information. This is the Basque Country. So it's in both borders of the Pyrenees. And this is more or less the political division. So we usually call this part the Northern Basque Country, where there are bilinguals with Basque and French. And this whole part, the Southern Basque Country, where there are bilinguals with Basque and Spanish, where I'm from. So the north, it's in one political bloc, but the south is divided into blocks. So we have on the one hand the Basque Autonomous Community, where Basque is co-official along with Spanish, and then we have Vizcaya, Araba, and Gipuzkoa. And then we have Nafarroa, Navarre, where something really weird happened. We'll get to this in a while, but basically it's divided in zones. So in the north, it's co-official. Basque and Spanish, they're both co-official. Then in the middle, we have something called mixed zone. So its officiality depends on the town, on the public funds, etc. And then we have the south, that's where it's non-official. So everything is in Spanish, and they don't have any right to have any public service in Basque. This will be important for afterwards. And obviously, in the north, it's not official, but not Basque, not any language that depends on the French government. The only possible official language is French. So here is Iruña or Pamplona, the capital of Nafarroa. And here in this little star is where the Eskua, the hand, was found, in the mixed zone. Okay, so where was it? And there were doing some excavations in Irulegi's castle, which was a castle that was inhabited by the Basque people during the Iron Age, and it was abandoned due to a fire that was during the September Wars or something like that. And the hand was found here, and this was close to the excavation of the castle, where they were investigating how people that lived in the village lived. So this is supposed to be urban, it's supposed to be a house with a little wall, and it was found there, along with other objects from the time. So how was the Iberian Peninsula at that time, linguistically speaking? Here we have the Basque Country, in pink, on red, where Aquitanian, which is the name given to Proto-Basque, was spoken. However, as you can see here, each shared borders or territory with other languages. In the blue one, the Celtic people lived, so they spoke either Celtic or Celtic and Iberian, a little mix that was from there. And then on the right, there was the Iberian language. So in these two borders, many languages coexisted. It wasn't just Basque, as far as we know. This is before the Romans came and inserted Latin. So here we are. So this, we'll see how why this is important now. If the inscriptions are indeed Basque, this would be a very important finding because it would be the oldest and longest text ever written in Proto-Basque or Aquitanian ever found. But is it Basque? So here we have the inscription. So far, this is the only word that we can understand with current Basque, which is Sorioneku, and sort of relates to current Basque, Sorioneku of good fortune. So there have been previous findings in Proto-Basque. However, there's a difference. All the rest were in Latin alphabet, and this is the alphabet that we use nowadays. And they were mostly in tombstones. They were either the name of people, name of towns, or just nouns, like Umesar, for instance, is the oldest son. However, in Irulegiko Eskua, as you may have seen, the alphabet was very different. It was the Iberian alphabet. So one of the possibilities is that the Basque people already had their own writing system before the Romans came and taught them the one that we use nowadays. So this is the alphabet. As you can see, it's very different. It's like triangle shaped. And this is the Latin alphabet, right? So they are very different. So two options. One, that it is Basque, and they had their own writing system before the Romans came. That would mean that they weren't as illiterate as we have always thought. And option B, that it's a variety of Iberian language, and that would be the Northeastic Iberic. So this is the problem with the Iberian language. At the beginning of the 20th century, it was decodified. So we know how to read it, but we don't know what it means, because the Iberian language died like, I don't know, 0 year or the 2nd century before Christ with the Romans. Dead. So is it Basque? It's still Iberic. So now let's go to the previous findings. This hasn't been the only object that was found with Proto-Basque inscriptions. However, the majority, or all of them, were found with Latin alphabet. Almost all of them. So this, as you can see, this is the current Basque Country territory, but we have a lot of findings both in the north and the south and the Pyrenees, showing that in all this territory, Basque was spoken at some point. However, we also found some little objects that were in Basque and using the Iberian alphabet. Some mosaic, and then these coins. As you can see here, it says Bascunes, Bascones, Bascons, and this is the Iberian alphabet. So there's a possibility that either they were multilingual, or they used both alphabets, or they used the Iberian alphabet before the Latin alphabet. So let's go now to the possible meanings. This is the debate. One of the possibilities is that indeed this is Sorioneco, good fortune. However, the word sorry itself in Basque is a debate. So one of the theories is that sorry comes from chori, bird, and that soriona, good fortune, means good bird, bird. Because in the European cultures, and even though Basque is not in the European, it was surrounded by them, it used to be a sign of good fortune if you saw a bird flying by your house, for example. So it's really typical to relate a bird with good fortune, at least in Western Europe. So that could be one possibility. The other one is that even the word sorry in Basque came from Latin source, because like suerte in Spanish, right? Of good fortune. So if this was in this Latin, it doesn't necessarily have to be Basque. So even it could be a mix, it could be Latin and Iberian, we don't know. And another issue is that the rest hasn't been decodified yet. So why can we understand one word with Basque but not the rest? Still a mistake. Were they multilingual? We don't know. And well, I forgot to say that this is thought to be a ritualistic hand that was hung on the door of houses, and this was also a typical tradition in all the northern cultures of the Iberian Peninsula. So it doesn't necessarily have to be related with Basque, or yes, because it's one of those cultures. So we don't know. So how is all this relevant to the current Nafarroa? So if we remember what I said before, Nafarroa has a very special situation when it comes to Basque officiality. So after the dictatorship, when they created the new constitution in Euskadi, that is in Vizcaya, Araba, and Gipuzkoa, they did the normalization law. And this meant that Spanish was co-official along Basque, and that people had the right to receive public education in Basque, go to administration and be attended in Basque, the same in public health, etc. However, in Nafarroa, they did a weird law. They did the zonification law, where depending on the number of Basque speakers that were per town, it would have one status of officiality or another one. Which considering that this was after the dictatorship, the number of speakers had gone down brutally, both because of immigration, because it was hardly punished, so it stopped being transmitted, etc. So it was an intelligent law in a way to destroy Basque. So in the north, we'll have the co-official part because it's where Basque is most spoken. Then in the middle, the mixed zone, and then in the south, the non-official. So one of the good news is that every X years when this law is renewed, some more towns of the non-official part goes to the mixed zone. And this is usually because people ask us to be included in the mixed zone so their children can attend public education in Basque. And then lastly, there's some sort of ideological denial in all this area. That's why changing the status from non-official to mixed zone is some sort of ideological fight. So the politicians that are against this sort of normalization law, or they feel that that Nafarroa is Spain and not indeed part of the Basque country, it's part of their policies to consider this as Spain, and they see Basque as a threat. So often the people that are in a mixed zone and in the non-official zone, they are divided between this radicalization and even identity of being Spanish, Navarrese, or Basque. So this is usually, it's an ideological, historical denial, it can be in some cases. So here we have some newspaper titles. Sorry, I couldn't find this one in English. It says, Pablo Casado, el euskera no es el idioma de Navarra. So he's saying Basque is not Navarro's language. Then we have another one, Basque uses invented words. Here they are trying to take down the standard Basque, which was created in the 60s, so that all Basque could understand each other because some varieties are hard to understand. And just good news, it wasn't invented, it was based on the most prestigious variety of the time, which was Beterriko Basque, the Basque from Beterriko, which is the valley located south to Donosti. But this is one of the arguments they use so that it isn't implemented in education or that it isn't part of the constitution. Then another one, Vox takes the normalization of Basque to court. Vox is this political party. So every time there's some attempt of normalizing the language, they take it as an ideological fight, as if it would go against their Spanish ideology, Spanish identity, or whatever that is. And finally, Eukene's work to turn the non-Basque speaking area, so the south of Navarre, into a linguistic bunker. So that's like the resistance. So imagine how it feels being a Basque speaker, someone who feels Basque and living in that part of the area where most of the people feel like they are resisting Basque and they're like keeping their Spanish roots, etc. However, not everything is bad news. So we have this other news that says 1 in 4 Navarrese knows Basque, twice as many as 30 years ago. Wow. So even though Basque has suffered years of shaming, the long dictatorship where people stopped transmitting Basque, they were punished for speaking Basque, a lot of people emigrated out of the Basque country. Then the inefficient linguistic politics that were chosen for Navarre, even though it has been revitalized in Navarre. So who are these new speakers? On the one hand, it's easy, the newborn Basque speakers, so those who were born into Basque speaking families, just acquired the language. But on the other hand, and this is the people that interest me right now, is the new speakers that became Basque speakers through either schooling, because their parents put them in Basque schools even though they didn't speak Basque in the family, or people who as adults decided to learn Basque so they could restore in a way the familiar heritage. So this one, they have been described as new speakers, those who have acquired Basque by other means than family transmission. So as you can see here, well, the numbers are very clear, but the darker it is, the more speakers there are, and the lighter it is, the less. So in these places, less than 5% of the people of the town speak Basque. And here in Tutera, there's an Icastola, that's like the resistance. So imagine how it is to learn Basque as an adult, to transmit to your kids, or to have your kids go to Icastola in one of these places, similar to the situation here, right? So it's a really big desire to restore the family heritage that at some point was lost across the generations. So this collective is very interesting, and this is part of my research because they are border identities. We're calling Ansalua border beings. There are people that are always in the crossfire between two worlds. Am I Spanish? Am I Basque? Where am I? So they have these two very these confusing identities because they are usually people from Basque ideologies in Spanish-speaking towns that attended Basque schools. They acquired through schooling, but then they are recognized, they are accepted, or they are always the outsiders in both groups. So when they go with Basque native speakers, they are perceived as Castilians or Spaniards because they come from Spanish-speaking families. Whereas when they are in their town, where mostly Spanish spoken, they are perceived as the Basque ones, the weirdos, the ones that are going against us. So it's there's always this negotiation of identity. Also, there's a big politicization of their identities, for what I told before about officiality. There's always this fight about where are we? Should we fight for Basque? Why don't they want us to learn Basque, to restore our family language, etc.? And something that's very interesting is that nowadays, thanks to the revitalization, the majority of the Basque youth go into this category. So it's sad and good news at the same time. It's sad because many people stop transmitting Basque. It's good news because the revitalization, at least when it comes to Basque knowledge, then if we speak Basque, that's another thing, it worked. So for these cases, findings such as Irulegiko, where it was found in an area where Basque wasn't recognized until 2008, and even though they still are struggling to have Basque education and Basque rights overall, it's sort of poetic justice. It has a lot of symbolism to find such a historical find in such old transcriptions in a town where politicians or the context in general has been denying that identity to you. However, this is not the first time that the Basque treasure appears just on time. So here we have the map of the Basque country. Sorry, the numbers are too small, but basically the darker they are, the more Basque speakers they have, the lighter they are, the less. So here we have the province of Araba, which is in Euskadi. Basque, as you remember, is co-official here along with Spanish. But the numbers are really low. Less than 40% of the population speaks Basque. So basically, it happened the same. The south of the Basque country was occupied first, well, the Arabs only this part, but then by the Romans, by the Castilians, etc. So also it makes sense. The part that is more in contact with monolingual Spain or monolingual France is the one that lost their historical Basque dialect first. However, thanks to the revitalization and normalization laws, these numbers could go from 0 to 40%, so that's great news. And in 2004, I couldn't find a newspaper because it's not at least on the internet. One of the political parties that was trying to get the government of Vitoria, capital of Araba, was saying that Basque wasn't a local language and that it had never been. Because just so that you look it, all the old texts found were mostly from this area. The oldest thing known about Araba in Basque was from around the 13th century or something like that, the Middle Ages. However, just on time, in the middle of the political campaign, this text appeared, which is Juan Las Araba's manuscript from around 1602. And this was a novel, poem, and some songs. It was truly a telenovela. It wasn't a love triangle, it was a love square. It was a crazy story written by this man, which was a novel from La Rea in Araba. And it was written fully in Basque. Then many other documents appear, like the genealogical tree of his family, etc. And I know that Oñati is very loved in this town, so the family mansion is actually in Oñati, in case you want to visit it. So basically what they found is that not only Basque was local to Araba too, but also that the novels used to use it just for recreation, to write novels or whatever. So yeah, in short, this is the question I want to leave you with. Can a historical find contribute to social change? So we have seen how symbolic appearances like Las Araba's manuscript or Irulegiko Eskua bring big symbolism along with all the historical findings such as the Aquitanian inscriptions or the Vasconic coins. And then if we see here, this is the map of the Basque kickback through the centuries. So right now, only the white area will have the historical variety alive. However, thanks to the Basque normalization, right now, all this area is Basque speakers. So all the pink and purple areas are Basque speakers too. It's not a historical variety, it's the standard Basque, but it works. So we only have this little part and then the northern Basque country, a little bit of it, where Basque hasn't been restored yet. So what I would argue is that that is very important. One of the contributions that these historical findings do to new speakers is some sort of identity revalidation. Say like, look, this is history, this is what happened. You are as valid as Basque speaker, you are as a valid Basque speaker as the others. And this is what history shows. It doesn't matter your ideology, what the political campaigns are about, because this is in a way a symbolic way of saying who Basque were, then up to us who we're going to be. So yeah, thank you so much. Eukene Franco.
We'd love to open it up for questions. Does that start? I'm back here. Does anybody have any questions for Eukene? And does anybody have any questions on Facebook Live?
She answered the one question that was asked
Perfect.
so far.
She's on it. I can tell you're a grad student like me. We're so used to having like condensed amount of times. Like this is the most like efficient presentation I think I have ever had here at the museum. Grad students doing it, right?
So if we could go back to the Basque hand and the runes, has that the actual alphabet that was on
At the
the
beginning.
inscription?
Possibly Iberian.
Yeah, so if it's possibly Iberian, has it been, because some of those runes are match Futhark, right? They have the I don't know all the names of the runes, so forgive me, but the one that looks kind of like a diamond with the legs coming down, so it. You know what I'm talking about?
Like the second one
No,
over
one up.
on this.
So one line up. Okay, so left. That one. So that one is a Futhark rune. Right? So has the Iberian been compared to possible other languages to see if those proto-languages possibly marry up with Proto-Norse or Proto-Russian to try and Proto-Slavic languages to try and see if you can piece together pieces of that?
Yeah, I don't know if they have been compared, but Iberian is pretty in the European language. So, and Russian or Slavic languages are in the European. So in principle, they're not related.
So then they possibly got their alphabet from the Iberians? If they,
So do you see that the alphabet is the same?
yeah, oh yeah. Those runes are very, very reminiscent, and some of them match perfectly with Futhark. So, which that is that's the Norse alphabet, and that died out in like 1200 AD. But before that, right, if they didn't have a system of writing and they interacted with the Iberians because they were a raiding culture, then they would have adopted their writing style before they had encountered the Romans. So it's possible that comparing other proto languages might be able to help figure out what it says, since Iberian is dead, right?
I don't work in historical linguistics, but it feels like the time spans way too big to be related, but who knows? I leave that to them, to those who actually work in historical linguistics.
So there was quite a discussion with the Irulegiko, where they found some artifacts that are quite similar to the ones that we found now with Irulegiko Eskua. Even some of the writings are pretty similar. And I know that those findings were kind of ignored, even if they have not been really studied, because there is a certain population of scholars who support a theory of late Bascanization, right? Which actually this hand and the Leia proved wrong, or would prove wrong, and that's why there was so much fight. And now they are not fighting this one, so does it mean that maybe they're going to open the Irulegiko exploration?
And as far as I know, that one is
Closed forever?
fake. Like the official answer is that it was forced, or like someone, it's not recognized as an antique object.
Although 95% of the artifacts have not been studied nor carbon dated, right?
I mean, with this, I know there's, so that doesn't repeat. They are being really careful because they don't want to say 100% that it's Basque, even though the media went crazy and everyone was like, yes, it's Basque. Yeah, because there's a big possibility that it's Iberian. Or that they just took this little word and the rest is Iberian. Yeah,
So any idea when we're gonna have the complete findings?
they're presuming they should be. I thought that they were presuming so that it would be out by February, but here we are, like nothing new appears so far. I know that now they are fighting for the copyrights because they want to do merchandising.
To reach that, I'm not sure.
There's a question online, how big is the hand? And they notice there's a hole at the top. Do they know what it is for? Was for?
No idea, they measure it.
I have it on my computer.
Yeah. And I've included a picture of the measure. No idea. No, as I said, I'm not an archaeologist, so I don't want to just like linguistics. My research is like the second part, the New-Speakerism part.
It looks like it's about 15 centimeters or so. That way. So if you look at this right here says 5 centimeters, so I would say 5, 10, 15 centimeters wide. And the holes to hang it. Anybody? Don't be shy.
Just a comment, I hail from Norway, and if I didn't know better, the letters up there looked exactly, someone was talking about runes, I think, and it's amazing, you know, it's a good reason to speculate that there's a carryover. And the Basque were explorers, you know, Greenland and possibly North America, right, fishing, and my ancestors went all over too, including Jerusalem, and you know, but it's fascinating, extremely fascinating. I wasn't able to catch everything you said, but
I'm sorry.
it just I'm so glad to be here. I spent summer in Basque Country 71, so it was a difficult time.
Franco.
And I had a friend there at the factory who was proud to show a mark here where he'd been clobbered by the police, you know. And there was a festival planned on a weekend and suddenly it was canceled. So we felt the drama and the tension, how you only spoke Basque in the back rooms of the stores. And it was all new to me, that kind of oppression. But it was, I fell in love with the Basques.
Where
So,
were you?
pardon?
Where were you?
Bilbao.
Bilbao.
I'm
Good
going back in
place.
the fall. So, yeah, we've been there a number of times.
We're pleased to be in the 70s.
There was definitely a connection between the Vikings and the Basques. I don't remember everything 100%, but a lot of our shipbuilding techniques were learned through, like, you know, Vikings that were in the Basque country. I don't know as much about the Basques going up to the northern countries. It's more of the Vikings coming through into the Bay of Biscay
Yeah,
and having landings. One of the things that is also sort of thought is that the prevalence of blue eyes and those sorts of features come from the mixing of these Vikings with these Basques in the region, but we're talking really, really, really long time ago. But there are, like, I have cousins who are very blonde and very blue-eyed, and it's very strange, right? So it's some sort of recessive gene there, and what has always been said, so this is not a very academic thing for me to say, but I've always heard that sort of thing about how it was introduced. So goes with what you were saying as well with the different symbols and whatnot. The script, the word that I'm looking for.
There's evidence of Basque Icelandic pigeon too.
Mhm.
as well.
Oh, yeah, well, the Iceland had a law that you could just kill Basques on the spot, so we definitely have connections up there too.
Wow. They removed it in like 2012.
Yep. James,
You may have already covered this, I'm sorry it's coming in late, but were there other artifacts found with the hand?
Yeah, no, I didn't talk about them, but yeah, because the archaeological find was in general to see how they lived in the Iron Age. So most of them were like house utensils, I don't know how to call them. I don't have the vocabulary for this.
Yes, you do. You were my student. You have that vocabulary. Yeah, it's
I don't want
kitchen
to
utensils and
lame, yeah, you know,
tools
like
and things
this.
like that.
Those things made of bronze. I don't know, yeah.
We're kind of just about your like studying, but are you, I know you're talking about studying. Maybe this is not it specifically, but border identities between like being Basque and Spanish and then being Basque American here. Are you studying it mostly linguistically or also like socially?
No, so that part is language ideologies, it's called.
Ah.
Yeah, in the Basque part, it's not that much Basque Spanish.
Mhm.
Unless they tell me that, but I'm not expecting to find that. It's more out people who are not, whose native tongue is not Basque, but Spanish, so they're from Spanish speaking household. But then they acquire Basque through schooling, so they have like, in their town, they are like, oh, the Basque, the one that wants to speak Basque for whatever reason. And then when they ladder to with the Basque speaking friends, they're like, oh, the Castilian. So it's not like they feel Castilian, is that depending on when they are, well, in general, they are not a legitimate Basque speaker. So when they are with natives, they are like the Castilian, and when they are with the other Castilian ones, they are like the weirdo that goes and speaks Basque instead of Spanish, where we would all be happy and would all understand each other.
Okay, so
I'm not expecting to find, like, if they are fighting to have a life in Basque, in general, I wouldn't expect them to tell me that they feel Spanish. But who knows in my house.
I've definitely experienced like here in Boise, you've been like very accepted in learning Basque and it's
Yeah.
very, very exciting and like. I love doing it, loving all the people I've met, but when I went to the Basque country, Spanish people were like, why wouldn't you learn Spanish? Why are you learning, you know, an ineffective language like Basque?
Yeah, and I think that's it's very interesting what you mentioned. Basque American and Spanish Basque. I think that Basque American is a mixed identity and it's pretty much an identity that people who came here took and accepted, wasn't imposed to them. So when somebody tells me because of a passport that I'm Spanish, well, I'm not, I feel very bad. And that's the issue in the Basque country is that there is an imposition of a language, a foreign language, which is Spanish. I don't say that people who have been there forever, they're not allowed to be in the Basque country, but they came and they conquered, like they've done in South America and all over the conquistadors. So that's it, the fight continues. And that's why the difference is here is more of an integration. People feel Americans and they in the land of the free and the land of the brave. Spain is not an accepting country. It's a total destruction. Either you are Spanish or you disappear, which they did in South America completely. And what they're trying to do since ever, because we talk always here about Franco. Franco is just a small part. It was big, but it was a small part of the destruction of the Basque culture that started in the 1400s already with the first laws. And yeah, so I think that in terms of identities, this one Basque American is a real thing. It's a mixed something. Basque Spanish, I don't know. It's more political and more passport or ID wise than heart wise.
I feel like here it has to do more with identity or being participating in the culture, whereas in the Basque country, at least the group that I'm trying to study, which is those who acquire Basque in high school and high school now in school, etc., is more about finding themselves within the Basque country, because a lot of us, we come from Basque speaking families. The transmission was cut at some point, but then we still feel Basque and we want to keep that language, we want to restore our identity in a way. So yeah, I think it's different.
And a comment or a question, because I haven't encountered that kind of a position of or kind of like resistance to a non-mother tongue Spaniards learning Basque and then not being accepted as Basque. Because I've got the example of this friend of mine who is actually Scottish or Welsh. He's from the UK, mother tongue English, speaks Basque perfectly. And so when we go to he goes to the Basque countries, like he's another Basque. And I think that that's the beauty of the actually the Basque identity, that is not based on color of your eyes or the skin or whatever it is that it's the language from mother tongue. And that's why I'm a little bit surprised, because I haven't encountered that if you are studying it, because it's a reality of people not being accepted once they embrace the culture, which is the language.
It's not necessarily that they're not accepted as Basque. It's more of being perceived as a second-class speakers. So it's something that I don't know. I don't think that here exists, but it's something like it's the natives versus the rest. Or that is the feeling I got like often, and now people are speaking about it. So it's like I think that it's a shared feeling, and especially a very characteristic feature is if you speak standard. That's like the mark that you don't speak Basque at home, even though now, like since the 80s, the standard has been transmitted at home. So someone could be speaking standard Basque, and that be their first tongue or their first variety. So, so yeah, it's basically that distinction between native and speaking it at home and non-native. And it could be usually based on the variety or being proficient.
Also location, no?
Yeah, location, and if you're from Bilbao, it's really easy to fall into the category of Spanish, Castellano, or whatever. I don't know, like this happens, sadly it happens. You can go to a highly Basque speaking town, you have a conversation in Basque, and then when you tell that you are from Bilbao or a town where Basque is not supposed to be spoken, they switch to Spanish. That's an ideology, because the whole conversation was happening just before you knew that information. I don't know, but I think that might be of the latest generations, let's say, because when I debate this with people that are the age of my parents, it was a bit of a throwback. It was people who spoke a variety at home felt that the people that spoke standard spoke their Basque, so there are like a lot of dynamics going there. But it all has to do with legitimacy, authenticity, and shame in a way, and accepting others. It's complex.
Yeah, I would say with Vizcaíno, I mean, what I've got a lot of times people will make fun of it because it does have so many words that are taken from Spanish, right? But I always give the example of a woman that I interviewed, or I began to interview in Euskera, and she spoke Vizcaíno, and she spoke a whole lot of Spanish when she was doing it, and she didn't understand me when I said lortu. She didn't understand. I asked her how she had gotten her job in New York, and I used lortu, and she had no idea what I was saying. And then she's like, conseguí tu, right? And so we switched to Spanish because it was better means for that interview, right? But who am I to deny that that woman's native language is not Basque, right? Because I learned Batua, right? And that is the language that I learned. It didn't take away from hers, right? Whereas I have seen people, not usually older people like she, but I have seen people make fun of people from Bermeo, right? For saying things like Harorie, right? Or Eniroi, right? So there is a little bit of a distinction within different Euskalkis in the way that people respect them or not, right?
It's also, I guess, related to the proficiency of the speaker with even their own Euskalki or variety of Euskera. I wouldn't say that Amurisa, when he speaks Vizcayera, he puts many words in Spanish. I think it's a question of how much you work even your own Euskalki to know all the variety of words, and that's the beauty of Euskera and all the different varieties of Euskalki. I don't know how to say that, all the varieties of the spoken, is that you can go from Vizcayan word Basque or Spanish, Vizcayan word to Suberga, and you have for the same item, like, I don't know how many. So whoever is interested could really have a very, very rich Euskera in all the dialects. And I think that many, both in Euskera Batua, Euskera, Vizcayera, whatever they are a little bit set in their ways in like, I don't understand you, so that's not correct. Instead of saying, I don't know, I might not understand a South African speaking English. I don't say that his English is bad. Maybe I have to understand and open my ears. The same thing with an Indian. I'm gonna tell you that that's not English. he was born with English, with his accents and everything. And that what happens in the Basque country. And I think that's the reaction of the young generation now saying, oh, whatever. It's really of such a big idiocy. If you compare that to other languages, take Spanish, Castilian, and go to South America. You might not understand half of the things at the beginning until you get used to the terms. So I think it's exactly the same thing in the Basque country. But the thing about using Spanish words and everything, which I do as well, it's just in my case. So I don't know what's the case for others. It's a question of laziness, because if I wanted to, I would look into the words in the dictionary. It's like, oh, this is the way I'm supposed to say it in Euskera. So
The case of this woman, she was
Yeah.
92
Yeah.
years old. I mean, that's how she learned Euskera.
But
Like, that was her Euskera. She immigrated to the United States when she was like 15. And conseguitu was her word, and that was not laziness on her part.
but
That
it's
was her
it's
language.
the same way that you say kukiche.
Exactly.
But
right.
that's not Basque. But I don't say that is bad or not. But what I mean is that there is this thing about, oh, no, there is a way as well to continue improving a language at any age, because I continue doing it. I'm not that young either anymore. But I think that that's the challenge that everybody has to embrace, even with Euskera, even if it is a minority language, is that it's very easy to go to any of the languages that we have, French, Spanish, English, and get something, or we can spend some time as well and keep on working on the language, and even learn the different varieties of the words in all the dialects.
Probably the best way to do that is to go to a place where they don't speak their varieties, so that you look for words in. Yeah, like if it was me, I would have to go to Iparralde, forget the little French I know, hopefully. See how I could say things. Yeah.
Yeah, and my first language is English, my second language is Basque, my third, very weak, is Spanish, and I'll go into Bilbao and I'll ask them always, do you speak Basque? And they say no, and then I say, okay, they try to speak Spanish. I ask them, do you speak English? And we finish by speaking in Basque. They don't speak Basque, they just don't have that opportunity. Or they don't feel threatened because they know that I'm not a native Basque speaker. So we actually have a very good conversation, and that happens often. Amazing amount of time that I've spoken Basque in Bilbao to people who are Batua speakers and felt very comfortable, but they wanted to jump into Spanish. I pushed them back into English, and we arrived at Basque, and we survived and functioned well. And I think that's the problem, is that we got to give Basque a chance. You got to give those people an opportunity to say that they are part of the culture and feel comfortable with it. And they do, at least with me, they feel very comfortable.
No, it's totally agree.
You should do a t-shirt with that.
What's that?
Give Basque a chance.
Teresa.
So I wear a hat that says Euskeras PC Naidu. So that either that or I'm going to walk around with a chapa with here's a Spanish word again, but the pin, so that once they see me, they can go straight into Basque if they want, or give them opportunity. But if you don't give it a chance, people will go into Spanish or English or whatever.
Caldera bate con Norman. You had a question?
So I was just thinking about how English has so many words that come from other languages. It's not just one language that it originates from, and how we were talking about how a lot of Basque speakers will take on Spanish words. So are there any, do we know if there are words in Euskera that they still use that were Iberian to support the idea that part of this hand is Iberian?
I mean, there are speculations, a lot of speculations. The problem is that what it has been done, because Iberian resembles a lot to current Basque. So there have been a lot of hypotheses of how they are related. But the problem is, and this is what the historical linguistics say, that you need to make a comparison with the Basque of that time. Because if not, it's like saying, oh yeah, Japanese and Basque are really like, yeah, right. That's just a coincidence, right? So there have been a lot of attempts. I think that some of the, like some city names may come from Iberian, but as far as in the language, if there's any word that comes from Iberian, I wouldn't know. But there have been a lot of attempts. Like one of the main reasons to claim that Basque and Iberian were related is that they are very alike, whereas you had to compare the Basque of like 2,000 years ago. And we only have like these little words here and there, so it's a really hard job.
Could that be because this was the Basque of 2,000 years ago, and so you can't compare it because they might have, like at the time it was a splinter, like the Proto-Basque was a splinter off, and so it wasn't a complete language isolate?
If like, I'm not sure, but so far the word that has been done about Proto-Basque is been done by Joseba Lacarra, and the word order that he suggests and the way the words were compounded, it wouldn't match with the Iberian of that time. So the Iberian of that time matches the current Basque. But as you may know, the language like shift, so they go like from isolated to flexible. There's like this shift word that like three kinds of languages and the same. So as all languages that are alike are like changing from one system to the other. And let's say that Basque was in a prior state. Like the way it worked back then would be more like the way English works right now. Like or like Chinese. They wouldn't have like all these declinations that we have now. Whereas the old English would look more like that where Basque is right now with the declinations of the cases, etc. I don't know if this makes sense because this is like historical linguistics. I'm trying to say it simple, but it's a mess. In short, the Basque of that time and the Iberian of that time, they weren't in the same system. They didn't work the same way.
Okay.
Do we know when Iberian and Basque first came into contact?
No, because the first time that we heard about the Basque being there, it's with the diary of Julio Caesar. How do you pronounce it?
Caesar.
Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar. So that's what we know what cultures were there. But before that, the only information that we have is like this. Well, not this because we don't know yet, so I won't say this, but like the other Thompson, these random words and the random appearances of Iberian. So we don't really know what was before that.
How has the Navarra government reacted to this find of the Irulegiko Eskua?
Everyone.
The official government, Chivite, and the socialists, are they more open to extending Basque into the non-Basque zones?
I don't think so. How would you say cada uno va para casa?
Do we have an expression
I don't
like
know.
that?
Like, you know.
Yeah, Jade, but it's more of like each person's gonna do what's convenient to them or what's
Yeah.
best for their cause.
They're
I
gonna
don't know,
interpret.
we don't have an expression like that I can think of.
That's amazing. Like basically the 8 of them interpreted the hand the way they wanted. So obviously if you didn't want it to believe it was Basque, they were saying like, oh, but remember that was fake. And then the others that were like, oh, if this was here, then Basque was more local than anything. As far as I know, they are more open to make it official. That's like the whole political campaign. So if they do that, they don't have the campaign anymore.
So I think it's kind of interesting that there's kind of pushback for creating a uniform Basque. Because that was ultimately that's ultimately what has unified certain ethnic or ethno-linguistic groups, right? So like in Germany, when Martin Luther did the 99 Theses, that started the German that we all think of today, right? The Hochdeutsch, that became because they unified under that. And so right now there might be turmoil, and maybe it'd be an interesting study to look back and see what people because there were 16 different dialects just in Germany, much less all the other dialects outside of Germany for German. So it'd be interesting to see how they thought of this Hochdeutsch coming along and being like, okay, well, that's not my German. That's just this German. Well, to see if, 50 years from now, it becomes, well, this is Basque. Yeah, this is the Basque we speak at home. It's never going to go away because those 16 dialects of German are still there in German. They're spoken at home. It's in the public that you speak the Hochdeutsch because it brings them together as Germans. So it could be, I just think it's interesting that right now, as people are presenting it, they're getting pushback when that's what's unified other groups in the past. So.
Yeah, I talked to some people in Germany that they feel like they shouldn't be part of Germany, like in Bavaria and I don't know what else.
Yeah. Well, that one might be a bad example. Because Bayer is pretty crazy, but.
So yeah, what I meant is like I think that there's still a little bit of pushback. Maybe it's not so popular, but
My understanding is that is a fringe group. It is not widely. I have friends from Bavaria and they don't identify as yeah.
low Saxon speakers.
My teachers were from Saxony and they were, or actually no, they were Stuttgart.
I know they are fighting like for it to be accessible in education and in administration, etc. I don't know how they feel about the old Deutsch.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong. But I think you're always going to have some sort of pushback because there's going to be groups that don't want to identify with the whole, but ultimately at the time they had greater threats, right? Like they had Charlemagne that they had to deal with. So that's what unified them. Right now you have the Navarro government. There's bigger fish to fry. And this is the one unifying piece. So.
That's why with Martin Luther, the Bible, the New Testament, like some years later, it was also translated to Basque. And that's like one of the, well, obviously, right, the biggest in 1571, and it was a petition of Navarre's queen when it was the independent kingdom, so that their people could have also like religion in Basque. But since it was Protestant and not Catholic, many people, well, let's start that they crossed frontiers so that the Protestantism wouldn't go down. That the Catholic kings did that, obviously. And on the one hand, and then on the other, it was based on the Basque of Northern Basque country. So where it's bilingual with French, and even though it included a glossary and the person who did that work with the whole team, and they tried to make it accessible to everyone, sadly, it wasn't a success. But that was also like one of the first attempts to create a unified Basque in 1571. So imagine, and here we are.
It's a process.
Yeah, it's a process.
But I think that's unified Basque is a very successful story. Tell the truth, allows Basque to speak in any region. I understand what a lot of people are trying to have an element of coolness with their Euskalki, especially the young people, especially even online. They write it like the way you pronounce it, which is okay. I understand. Like, betcha. I use it. Okay. It's bet you, but you're gonna write BTCH, whatever, right? Exactly the same. At some moment, I mean, you need to normalize something to allow everybody to understand each other. So I think that everybody will come to terms. But it's there is a cool factor at the moment, the betcha kind of things, using your own Euskalki. But still, I don't believe, except Zuberatara, that any of the Euskalkis or the versions of Euskera are not understandable. If you open your ears and you give it a chance for a minute, Zuberera, it's another case. You need more than a minute. Panondarwa the same, it's like I'm not from Vizcaya and everybody speaks Vizcayan here. I don't have any issue understanding anybody. Exactly. There are words that I might not know, but you hear them on the first time and you just, okay, that's the way he said it. Fine, And I think that's it's kind of like any other language, a mindset thing, and there is like a chronic fight at the moment. Some people, I think, kind of a cool factor. I don't know, I don't live there, so I don't know where's that coming from. But yeah, that's happening. I mean, they wouldn't write like that in Spanish. They would use the normalized Spanish, or they wouldn't write like that in English. They would use a kind of normalized English, but they do it in Basque, which is like, okay, kind of yeah, I'm not gonna use other adjectives. So kind of weird.
I think that's like one to self-differentiate from the standard speakers, and then two to be recognized as a legitimate speaker or authentic in a way. So you sound native. I think that it all goes around showing and demonstrating that you deserve to be recognized as native speaker. Perfect.
All right. Any last questions? Let's give Eukene a big round of applause. You are all welcome to come on through this little hallway, and we've got some food and drink, some wine. So you can continue the conversation right next